The night was heavy with tension as Mirabelle stood before her parents, her small frame trembling under the weight of their condemnation. "You've brought shame upon this family." Lono's voice thundered, his words cutting through her like daggers. Mirabelle's knees buckled, her voice a faint whisper. "I didn't mean to. I was scared," she stammered, tears streaming down her face. Evelyn crossed her arms, her face hardened with disgust. "Didn't mean to? You're 14, Mirabelle. 14. How could you let this happen? Pregnant at your age? It's disgusting." Mirabelle's hands shook as she tried to explain. "Mom, don't call me Mom," Evelyn snapped, her tone sharp as a blade. "You've disgraced this family. Pack your things and leave. Please, Dad." Mirabelle turned to Lono, her eyes pleading. But Lono slammed his hand on the table, his face set in stone. "We don't have a daughter anymore. Get out." Her heart shattered into a million pieces. With nowhere to turn and no one to comfort her, Mirabelle fled into the pouring rain. The whispers of neighbors followed her like shadows, their judgment piercing the storm. Cold, hungry, and drenched, she wandered the empty streets, the rain soaking through her thin clothes and chilling her to the bone. Desperation gnawed at her as she searched for shelter. An abandoned building caught her eye, its cracked walls offering a glimmer of hope. But a gruff man barred her entrance. "Get lost, girl. We don't want trouble here." Her stomach growled as she backed away, defeated. Finally, she found a bench in the park and curled up, clutching her stomach protectively. The cold night was merciless, but exhaustion claimed her, and she drifted into an uneasy sleep. Later, footsteps and muffled voices roused her. A group of men loomed in the shadows, their intentions clear. Panic surged through Mirabelle as she bolted, her feet slipping on the wet ground. She ran until she found a narrow alley and collapsed under a tree. "Why does everyone hate me?" she whispered, her voice cracking as tears mingled with the rain. Fever and despair overtook her, and she lost consciousness. "Child, wake up," a warm voice called gently. Mirabelle blinked through the haze and met the kind eyes of an elderly woman. "I don't know where to go," Mirabelle murmured weakly, collapsing into her arms. The woman, Martha, carried her to a small bakery that radiated warmth and the comforting smell of fresh bread. "Eat," Martha said, setting a bowl of soup before her. Mirabelle hesitated, her hand trembling. "Why are you helping me?" Martha smiled softly. "Because everyone deserves kindness, especially when the world turns its back on them." For the first time in days, Mirabelle felt safe. She began helping around the bakery, sweeping floors and learning to knead dough under Martha's patient guidance. Despite her gratitude, the small town's cruelty persisted. "That's the girl who got kicked out," sneered Esteban, a local grocer. Martha glared at him. "If you don't have anything kind to say, Esteban, you can take your business elsewhere." The whispers and judgmental stares weighed heavily on Mirabelle. One evening, a group of men harassed her outside the bakery. "Get inside," Martha shouted, wielding a broom like a weapon. The men scattered, and Martha hugged Mirabelle tightly. "Don't let them win, child." As Mirabelle adjusted to life with Martha, she found herself determined to rise above her circumstances. But the challenges were unrelenting. She sought work to ease Martha's burden, only to face rejection after rejection. "We don't hire people like you," one shopkeeper sneered. Humiliated and defeated, Mirabelle returned to the bakery in tears. "I can't do this anymore, Martha." Martha placed a hand on her shoulder. "You're stronger than you think. Remember, you're not just living for yourself anymore. That child inside you needs you to keep going." Those words ignited a spark in Mirabelle's heart. Years later, Mirabelle returned to the town she had once fled. Time had transformed her from a frightened girl into a poised businesswoman. By her side was her son, Daniel, now a confident 14-year-old. Together, they walked through the bustling streets toward her parents' home. Evelyn opened the door, her face pale. "Mirabelle," she whispered. "Hello, Mother," Mirabelle said calmly. "I thought it was time for you to meet your grandson." Daniel stepped forward, extending his hand. "Nice to meet you, Grandma." Lono appeared behind Evelyn, his expression unreadable. "Is that you, Mirabelle?" he asked, his voice faltering. You've changed. We made a mistake. Mirabel nodded. I've forgiven you, but I came back for closure, not approval. I've built a life for myself and my son, despite everything. Before leaving, she handed Evelyn a package containing a loaf of bread and a note. This bread represents resilience and forgiveness. It's a reminder that broken things can be mended with time and effort. Evelyn sat on the porch, staring into the distance. Days had passed since Mirabel's visit, but her words still echoed in Evelyn's mind. I came to show you that no amount of rejection or hardship could break me, Mirabel said, her voice steady as she faced her parents. Lano joined her, his usually stern face softened by regret. She's not the same girl we sent away. Evelyn's voice cracked, tears threatening to fall. Lano, we abandoned her when she needed us the most. We judged her, shamed her, and yet, she forgave us. Lano nodded solemnly. We have to make this right, Evelyn. Not for forgiveness, but because she deserves to hear it. Determined, they set out to find Mirabel. They asked neighbors, old friends, and anyone who might know where she was living. Most directed them to the bakery Mirabel had built in honor of Martha. When they arrived at Martha's oven, the bustling atmosphere caught them off guard. The bakery was warm and inviting, filled with customers savoring pastries and coffee. Behind the counter, Mirabel worked with effortless grace, her face calm and radiant. She's built all this, Evelyn whispered, her voice tinged with awe and shame. Lano cleared his throat, suddenly nervous. Let's speak to her. As the crowd thinned, Lano and Evelyn approached the counter. Mirabel looked up, her expression unreadable. Mom, Dad, what are you doing here? She asked, her tone polite but distant. Evelyn clasped her hands nervously. We came to see you. To talk. Mirabel nodded, her posture stiff. I'm listening. Lano stepped forward. Mirabel, we were wrong about everything. We let our pride, our shame, and our fear dictate how we treated you. We're sorry for abandoning you when you needed us most. Evelyn's voice trembled. Seeing you now, knowing what you've accomplished, it's clear we were blind. You've built a beautiful life for yourself, Mirabel. We're so proud of you. Mirabel folded her arms, her gaze steady. Proud? Now? After all these years? Do you have any idea what I went through? Evelyn wiped her tears, guilt etched across her face. We don't, and that's on us. We don't expect forgiveness, Mirabel, but we want you to know how deeply sorry we are. Mirabel softened slightly and gestured for them to sit. I'll tell you this much. Everything I am today, I owe to Martha. She found me when I had no one. She fed me, taught me, and gave me hope when the world turned its back on me. Including you. Her voice was steady but firm. She's my mother now. She treated me like a daughter when my own parents didn't. Lano lowered his head. We don't deserve to be called your parents. But please, know that we regret every moment we failed you. At that moment, Martha entered the bakery, her face lighting up at the sight of Mirabel. Busy day, darling? She asked, her voice warm and familiar. Mirabel smiled. Always, Mama. Martha noticed Lano and Evelyn and raised an eyebrow. These must be your parents? Yes, Mirabel said, her tone neutral. They're here to apologize. Martha's expression softened. Well, it's about time. She turned to Lano and Evelyn. I don't know what you said to her all those years ago, but I saw the broken girl you left behind, and I saw her rebuild herself. She's strong because she had to be. Lano and Evelyn exchanged ashamed glances. We know, Lano said, his voice heavy with emotion, and we're grateful she had you. Mirabel stood, her arms crossed. I've spent years thinking I needed your love, your approval, but I've realized something. I don't. I've built a life I'm proud of, and I did it without you. Evelyn's tears flowed freely. Mirabel, we don't deserve your forgiveness, but we're asking for it anyway. Please, let us be part of your life again. Mirabel sighed deeply, her heart heavy. I've already forgiven you. Carrying anger only hurts me, and I won't let that hold me back. But understand this, forgiveness doesn't mean things go back to the way they were. Martha is the mother I needed, and she always will be. That doesn't mean I'll erase you from my life, but the bond we had? It's different now. Evelyn nodded, her face crumpling with relief. We understand, and we're thankful for any chance to know you again. Lano reached for Mirabelle's hand. We've lost so much time, but we'd like to start over if you'll let us. Martha placed a hand on Mirabelle's shoulder. Sometimes, forgiveness isn't about the person asking. It's about freeing yourself. You've grown into an incredible woman, Mirabelle. Your heart is big enough for that. Mirabelle nodded, tears glistening in her eyes. She turned to her parents. I'll let you into my life, but you have to earn a place in Daniel's. He deserves grandparents who love him unconditionally, not ones who judge him for his origins. Lano and Evelyn nodded fervently. We'll do whatever it takes, Evelyn promised. As weeks passed, Lano and Evelyn began visiting the bakery regularly. They got to know Daniel, who was warm and polite but cautious. Mirabelle watched from a distance, her heart conflicted but hopeful. She saw her parents trying, truly trying, to rebuild the bridges they had burned. One evening, as they sat together over coffee, Lano turned to Mirabelle. You've built something beautiful here, Mirabelle. We're honored to witness it. Mirabelle smiled faintly. It wasn't easy, but it taught me that even broken things can be mended if both sides are willing. Martha, sitting nearby, raised her cup. To healing. Mirabelle clinked her cup with hers. To healing. For the first time in years, Mirabelle felt the warmth of a family, new and old, beginning to grow. Mirabelle's journey didn't end with her return. She expanded Martha's oven into a chain, using her success to mentor struggling young women. One evening, as she stood in her bustling shop with Daniel by her side, she reflected on the life she had built. Her pain had become her strength, and her story was a beacon of hope for those who felt lost. No matter how dark the night, she told Daniel, there's always a dawn waiting to break. Mirabelle's resilience had turned her tragedy into triumph, proving that even in the face of rejection and hardship, redemption was possible.